Excuse me.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm thrilled today to have with us Nathan Turner. Nathan is the manager of the Earnest Investing Fund, which is a mortgage note fund. We're going to get into some of that. And also, Nathan, I know you put on an awesome mortgage note event, and this year it's going to be in Nashville. It's coming up. It's called the Diversified Mortgage Expo. Nathan, thanks for joining us, man.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So before we jump back into your backstory, tell the listener a little bit more about what you're up to today.
Yeah, so my real job is manager of the Earnest Investing Note Fund, where we buy performing notes just for passive investors, people who are looking to build their retirement, just looking to put their money to work for them. On top of that, kind of like a side gig is running this conference, Diversified Mortgage Expo. We just took it over last year, and then this year's our second time running it. And coming up quick here, May 31st, June 1st in Nashville. And it's just all things notes. Anybody who's either interested in or well invested into notes, it's for anybody in that whole category.
Absolutely. I know I've been to it before, and it's I was not able to make it last year, which was your first year running it, like you said, but I heard a lot of very positive reviews about it. So
We
looking
loved it.
forward
It was a
to,
lot of fun.
yeah, absolutely. So we'll talk more about that in a bit, but
Sure.
Nathan, I know it hasn't always been rainbows and unicorns and butterflies from a business standpoint for you. Um, let's jump back and let's just dive headfirst into some of the adversity that you've been through with running a business. Where do you want to start?
Oh boy. Well, let's start here. So I've never had, quote unquote real job. I've always just kind of worked for myself. Probably the closest thing that I had was just after my wife and I were married, we went to Korea for a year to teach English. So at that point, I was employed by somebody else. A bit unusual and a bit unorthodox, but
Sure.
that's probably the
That's
last
the
time that I've
last.
actually had somebody else pay me.
Wow. That was a long time ago, huh?
That was. We have been married. So it was right after we got married. This year's our 23rd wedding
Oh,
anniversary. So it was
congrats.
about 22 years ago. It's a long time.
Got it. Um, and before we start talking about the some of your business ventures,
Yeah.
was it did you know? I mean, because everyone's situation is different, everyone's story is different, everyone's path is different as far as, for example, I had some businesses a long time ago, lawn and
Yeah.
landscaping business. I had a I never really talk about this one, but I had a gumball machine business and
Okay.
just little, and then went to college and eventually got a real job. And but I did 7 years part-time at my quote unquote real job while I was building my real estate and note investing businesses.
Yeah.
Um, so not everyone has that same path. Did you know, just when did you know I'm an entrepreneur?
Um, I, I think for me, the revelation came where we had my wife and I's first business, the Curves franchise. It was that gym for women that happened years ago. And it was shortly after we opened our first location. And I remember being home, and I mean, really, really, it was after our first daughter was born. And I was home. I was working from home. And she's, apple of my eye and, just such a blessing in our lives. And then the realization to me came that, and I said to my wife, I actually don't care what I do from here on out, as long as I can work from home. And
Mm,
I know that's not for everybody, and certainly the office has its place, and it's a great thing. But for me, I
right.
was like, no, this is what it's all about. So
Well, and
that's probably the moment.
that makes sense. And I mean, truth be told, that back then, people listening now might be like, well, why didn't you just take a job working from home? Well, it really wasn't a thing.
Not really, not back then. No.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we'll maybe get into it, but there have certainly been times where I'm like, maybe I should just go to get a job where things were
I hear you.
tough.
Either, yeah, either for I mean, it could be, sounds like financial reasons,
Yeah.
but also sometimes, you know, working from home also has some downsides as well, just from a day-to-day
Yeah.
living standpoint. But
Yeah.
so okay, you mentioned curves. So
Yeah.
talk about that business if you would.
So Curves was a franchise, women's fitness, and fantastic concept where they used hydraulic machines, where ladies would go around and women only, so that it was a comfortable place for women to come and work out. That
Mm-hmm.
they're not the gym bunny, they're not going with the big muscly guys eyeing them and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they would go, and it was just a comfortable place to do it. And because they're hydraulic machines, the more you pushed on it, the more it would resist. So it was really
Mm-hmm.
tailored to all fitness levels. It was really a great concept. So we
Mm-hmm.
opened our first one 2004. We actually moved to Quebec in Canada, which is a French province. And my wife and
Mm-hmm.
I both had some French. So we thought, yeah, we can do this. We're young. Sure, why not? The plan was we were going to move there, open up the business, stay there for a year, and then move back closer to her family in Ontario. So that was the plan. We thought we'd be there for a year,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, you know
and
what Mike Tyson says about
you
plans.
get hit in the face, and we certainly got hit in the face multiple times. But yeah, we ended up staying there almost 19 by the time we finally
Wow.
moved away. So certainly not what we originally planned on, but
Sure. So, okay, you open
life
the
goes.
first, yeah. Okay, and now just briefly, why a franchise?
Well, it started when we were in Korea, where we were coming back to Canada, and we thought, okay, now what? What do we do now,
Hmm.
as far as life and work and those kinds of things? We had been able to pay off all of our debt and create a little bit of a nest egg for ourselves. So we were like, yeah, we got this. We can do whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and then separately, my mother and my father-in-law both sent us different information within maybe a week of each other, all about curves and this
Hmm.
new franchise that was coming up. And we're
Okay.
so we're like, okay, that's interesting. And so we looked more into it, and it looked like something that we could do and something exciting to kind of sink our teeth into. Both of us spoke French, and the only place you could still buy a franchise territory was in Quebec. We're French speaking, so we're like, yeah, you know what, we got this, we can do this. So we were up for an adventure. We thought we could make a
Hmm.
go of it.
Got it.
That's how we got
Um,
started.
okay. All right. So, you know, we've alluded to the fact that things did not go to plan. Uh,
Not exactly.
so so how did your curves experience look overall? I mean, what was the you how many locations did you end up having? What did things look like?
We ended up having two. So
Okay.
after the first year, there were maybe 40 franchises in Quebec, and we were in the top five, maybe even the top three of the largest clubs. So it was
Okay.
very successful. We were doing really well. And we're like, yeah, this is cool. Let's make this our life. So we're like, okay, we'll
Hmm.
we'll open another, and then maybe another. We'll see. So we
Hmm.
opened up the second right from the get-go. We knew, just according to the area, we knew it wouldn't be as successful as the first, just because of the demographics and stuff.
Okay.
We knew that was going to be the case. But we also knew, figured it would be profitable.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
it was barely. It was like just barely making any profit
Hmm.
month after month, and then it wasn't. And then we started getting into 2007, and I think everybody could kind of see the writing on the wall where the economy was just starting to dip. And then by
Hmm.
2008, when things were really going down, if people are trying to save money, what's the first thing they cut?
Mm.
Gym
Gym
membership.
membership. Sure.
So
Yeah.
that was tough. So then it just went down and down and down. So just prior to that, well, we'll get into that in maybe a minute, but that second location, it was great, but like I say, it was just kind of barely making it. And we are having to take money from the first club,
Mm.
put it back into the second one from sometimes,
Hmm.
and other times not. But it was just kind of like just barely hanging on. So
Yeah.
that was kind of where we started thinking about, like, okay, what else can we do here? Because
Hmm.
do we want to keep doing this or something else? And that's
Yeah.
that's when I kind of fell into real estate.
Okay. So before we get to real estate, so how did you decide to like how did you and your wife divide and conquer on the business side of things? Because I've worked with my wife in on business things before, and it's, you know, she'll tell you it comes with its own set of challenges for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
what did that look like? What role did you each play?
So initially I was kind of the behind the scenes guy. So I did like the marketing and the accounting and things like that. And she was the face. It was a
Hmm.
women's fitness
Mm.
place. So
Yeah,
she was the one, she was there
right.
literally every day. It was open 6 days a week. So she was there 6 days a week, most of the day. And it was right, maybe six or I don't know, 10 months in, somewhere in that range, where we wanted to, it was at that point we wanted to have our second child. So we already had our baby and we wanted another one. We were looking at just our life and going like, how's that going to work? And how's that going to
Hmm.
be with two kids and mom working all day and I was home, but is that what we wanted? And
Hmm.
so a lot of looking at that and eventually we just decided, no, you know what? For us, it was mom should be in home. Mom is much better than dad in a lot of cases.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we kind of flip-flopped where she ended up staying home. And then because she was home, she could do a lot of that background stuff. And then I would sometimes, I wouldn't go in very often, but I would go into the club a couple of times a week, get whatever reports I needed, deposits and things like that.
Hmm.
And the ladies knew me, and I was the one guy
Hmm.
that was allowed in, and that kind of thing.
Right.
Uh, so it was okay, but again, we didn't have that omnipresence that we had before. And it was
Hmm.
really, I think that's where it kind of started to crack a little
Hmm.
bit, where we had to hire managers and then they weren't handling things exactly the way we would have. And,
Yeah,
you start to lose a little bit of that control.
that oversight and control. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was because of your family situation, you two had to pull back as a unit some, and um, you just weren't as hands-on, and therefore you're hiring, which creates more expenses and then less control.
Yeah.
And so what did it look like, if you're willing to share, from a financial standpoint or anything like that, as far as
Yeah.
maybe how much did you put into these, and what did the business overall, if we're talking curves overall, kind of
Yeah.
just how did it look financially, all said and done?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing. So like I say, those first couple of years we were doing well and we
Hmm.
were kind of looking at it and going, okay, if we can duplicate what the first one was doing, if
Hmm.
we could do that like three or four times, we'd be
Yeah.
sitting really pretty. That would be fantastic.
Hmm.
That second one did not perform the same as the first. And we're
Hmm.
like, okay. And then eventually, so as time goes on, it's kind of up and down and up and down and kind of
Hmm.
in a downward
Yeah,
line.
trajectory. Yeah.
And then we had put up this, we decided we wanted to sell and just kind of try something else, do something else.
Hmm.
We had originally listed both clubs for $200,000 each.
Okay.
Um, by the time we eventually sold in
Hmm.
2009, we had shut down that second one and combined the membership to the first. And by the time we finally sold, we sold that one club for 20,000
Wow.
after putting in a
Wow.
lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars into rent and payroll and things that the
Yeah.
club wasn't producing for itself.
Gotcha. No, I appreciate you being, open and transparent. And that's one of the things we try to bring out in this on this show is the fact that you and I were chatting a little beforehand, but business can be hard. Business can be really hard.
It can be.
And it it's it's not for everyone. It can bleed over into other areas of your life if things aren't going well. It can affect
Hmm.
relationships. And um, so we're going to get to real estate in a second here, which is
Yeah.
obviously both of our wheelhouses. Um, Mentally, where were you and your wife when you sold for 20,000? The show is a lot about
Fragile.
mental health and mental fitness. Fragile. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, talk about what that looked like from a mental standpoint and just mindset and how did you kind of climb your way out mentally from that? I imagine it was a fairly dark place.
It was. It was. I'm incredibly stressful. Where I mean, you talk about losing sleep at night. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Where literally I was not sleeping at night, just
Hmm.
up worrying about all these different things and bills due and things like that. And it was brutal. It was really hard.
Hmm.
And then we had our two little ones at home, and it was soon after that we had our third, and that was in itself very stressful. We lost our first child.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
we've got four kids, but we're raising three. The first
Mm-hmm.
one was stillborn, so pregnancies were already super challenging and very, very, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
very stressful. So
Sure.
then add on the business to that,
Right.
and getting back to the real estate thing, that's what kind
Yeah.
of kept us afloat for as long as it did,
Okay.
until we were eventually able to transition into it full time and start to turn things around. But it's taken some
Okay.
time.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and it's one of those we talk about that, you were in the sort of the valley for probably several years. It sounds like, and
Yeah,
we'll gloss over it, and it'll sound like it was a bad day.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so just for the listener, your Nathan went through a really hard time. I've been through some hard times, and both personally and professionally, and everyone listening is going to go through additional hard times, and it's part of life, and that's the
Mhm.
adversity that we're guaranteed to face. So were there any, but we're going to get to the real estate, but were there any sort of mental tricks or habits or any kind of mindset shifts that you started to put in place to help you maybe see the real estate opportunity?
Yes. I, I've I kind of from the time that we started working in business. So I started reading books like Rich Dad Poor Dad,
Hmm.
Millionaire Mind, things like that, where it helped me to start looking around and seeing different opportunities. So
Hmm.
that's what kind of got me going in the real
Yeah.
estate in the first place. But then even on top of that, I remember very distinctly at one point, and I don't remember exactly when, but I remember very much that I was sitting there and I kind of had the realization that I'm the boss. That means
Mm.
I run the company doesn't run me. And that was very much a mind shift where it was like, no, 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 no. I'm
Yeah.
taking charge. I'm the one that runs things, not the
Yeah.
business telling me what to do.
Yeah. I love
Hold
that.
on. And just that reversal.
Yeah. So, and some people might hear that and freak out, or but the way you're explaining it and the way I'm understanding it is that it's a liberating realization. It's
Definitely.
it's you're yes, you're taking ownership. Yes, there's responsibility now on your shoulders, but that was already there anyway.
Yeah.
It's just now you have control and influence over how this thing, the direction of your business and your ultimately your family's, you
Yeah.
know, future. Okay,
Yeah.
so
That was a big
and
deal for me.
I had a similar just eh, mindset shift in a little bit, a few years after you did, but just 2014, 2015, I started listening to more real estate podcasts and reading more real estate books and just
Hmm.
more eh, positive mindset, influences in my life. And I stopped watching the news
Hmm.
and started paying attention to the strengths that I had in my life and the people in my life and the resources that were available, um, to make a change.
Yeah.
And so I can identify with that for sure. So we're talking, you said around 2009, 2010. Is that when you started to make the transition into real estate?
Yeah, more full time, more full time.
Got it.
Going back. So let's go back a
Hmm.
little bit. So
Yeah.
we're running the curves, and I got a call from somebody. They wanted to meet with me about being able to get discounted cleaning products. And
Okay.
I'm like, sure, we do cleaning products. We clean stuff all the time. So sure,
Hmm.
let's have a conversation.
Hmm.
So I met up with her at one of the gyms, and we go
Hmm.
into the little side office thing, and she we kind of chatted for a little bit, and as we were chatting, she said something about uh, the real estate market in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And if
Okay.
no, you don't know where that is, that's fine. Most people don't.
Yeah. Uh,
It's
I
like
mean,
straight up from Wyoming is where that would be.
got it.
Uh, Small farming city, about 200,000 people. But she's like, yeah, it's really booming out there. And it just kind of like clicked in my mind. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then she
Mhm.
proceeded to try to get me to join Melaleuca and buy Melaleuca products and
Okay.
this multi-level thing.
Yeah.
And for me,
Multi-level marketing. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just not interested at all.
Sure.
Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it just was not for me.
Right. It's not my thing either.
Yeah, yeah.
For
But I
sure.
did take that little piece of information and went, really, Saskatoon? I'd been there. My dad was born there. And so we'd visited some family. It's a pretty sleepy town. Like
Sleepy
it's
town.
literally farming city. That's it. That's what they do. But I knew
Okay.
somebody that lived there. So I called and I said, hey, what's going on in Saskatoon? Like, is there a lot of real estate going on? He's like, oh, you mean Saskaboom? And he just like went off and talking about prices are just going up and up and up every month. And I'm like, really,
Hmm.
Saskatoon? So that was kind of like that whole idea of keeping your eyes open, where
Sure.
I'm like,
Right.
huh, interesting.
Yeah. You could have either not met with this person about the cleaning
Yeah.
thing, or you could have really just dismissed it as I'm not interested by, but you were listening and open to opportunities. Right.
And before that, even that, but after that, I'm like, I will never turn down a meeting. I don't care what it's about, because there's going to be something that we can pull
Yeah,
out of
that's
there.
a good point. Right.
So I talk to everybody because who knows? You never know.
Sure.
But that was it. So then we started flipping properties.
Okay.
And sure enough, the real estate market was red hot, where I could go, I would pack up a suitcase full of tools and a sleeping bag.
Uh-huh.
So I'd go and I'd sleep on the floor and I would work 16 hours a day, just renovating whatever house we had just bought
Okay.
using my brother-in-law's money to go out and get this project done. And it worked fantastically well. And it was enough that it kept us afloat and it helped keep the businesses afloat, where we ended up most of that, the vast majority of that went back into those businesses just to keep them afloat, pay for, like I say,
Mm,
rent and payroll, those kinds of things.
yeah. This was the curves business, as you're saying, that
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
went back into, right? So you were doing the flipping pretty much the whole time you were running the curves franchises
The last couple of years, yeah.
last couple of years. Got it. So what time frame are we talking about that you were doing flipping?
Started doing that like in 2006. So I did
Gotcha.
between 2006 and 7, I think I did 6 properties
Okay.
we fixed and flipped.
Nice.
Um, and it worked really well, except
Yeah.
for the last one, where
Okay.
again, that economy just started to change.
Yeah.
And so I ended up having to rent it out because I'm like, well, I guess that's what you do when you own
Right.
property. You can't sell it, you rent it.
Yeah.
And I figured out very quickly that I really liked the cash flow because surely we needed it at that point, but I
Sure.
didn't like anything else. It was
Yeah.
really difficult to manage, especially from afar. It
Sure.
was just a major headache. And I'm like, man, why do people do this? Like, I don't see it. I don't see the
The
draw.
draw. Um, yeah, I mean, I similar to you, I got into rental properties first before I got into mortgage notes, and I never had a flipping business. We're more doing the Burr method where you rehab and then hold the property and
Yeah,
keep trying to do that again. In current conditions, I don't think that's a real strong play right now,
yeah, yeah.
but it was working for us, and my wife and I've held on to those properties, which is we've got property managers, so it's really not too much of a headache, but it's an important piece of our cash flow for sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's a different thing. Flipping is a transactional, very hands-on
yeah,
thing, and you can get a lump sum, which is nice. Then you got to go out and do it again.
yeah,
Um, so okay, so then you were kind of a forced landlord, if you will,
yeah,
on that last flip. And
yeah.
then where did things go from there?
So it was, and then we finally sold the curves. So I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, at least it's off my plate. You know what I mean?
sure.
And
Yeah.
we were even further in debt at that point, and now we
Mm,
owed all kinds of money to all kinds of people, and
Mm,
but the bleeding had stopped. So good enough.
gotcha.
And then it was soon after that where it was a friend of mine, also from Canada. He'd moved down to California. He met up with this group of investors where they had bought a portfolio of properties, mostly centered in the Midwest.
Hmm.
And they bought in '07,
Hmm.
April of '07, right at the top of the
Hmm.
market. And by the fall of 2008, they're like, oh, shoot, what do we do with this stuff? Like, it's not what
Hmm.
we thought it was. And the value has certainly dropped and all that. So they basically just kind of gave us whatever freedom. They said, so you guys have power of attorney over all of this.
Hmm.
Do what you can. So
Wow.
we started, we thought we'd invented seller financing. We were like, oh, this is a great idea. We'll sell it on terms. So that was the method that we had created to start selling those. So that was really my first introduction to notes, was
Okay.
selling these properties on terms,
All right. So
creating notes.
yeah, so it can be hypothetical or a real example, but just give us a short version of a case study. So with some numbers
Yeah.
behind it, what does that look like? If what are you talking about? So just for the listener who's less familiar with this, what did
Yeah.
one of those properties and those projects look like?
So you got to go back in time a little bit. So this was like 2008, 2009, Midwest, houses that were already in disrepair in 2007. So this before the crash, they were in rough shape.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rent a car and go and drive around to go and kind of inspect these properties and see what was going on with them. I had a vinyl printing machine, like a vinyl cutter. And
Okay,
so I
yeah.
would make a sign that says own a home for less than rent with my phone number. So we
Mm-hmm.
would look at market rent, say it was like $400 on this house.
Okay.
Then we would sell it to you for $350 a month. We would get like $1,000 down payment
Mm-hmm.
and $350 a month. The deal is you, as the borrower, as the occupant, you're the
Mm-hmm.
one in charge of fixing up the property,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of it, doing all that stuff. We're just basically providing the financing for you, so that after whatever time it was, 5 years or something like that, then the rent you're paying, a portion of that, like it was a lease agreement, basically, a
Lease
lease with an
lease
option to
option.
buy.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it.
And we'll set it up so that, after a certain time, you've created a little more equity. You can go
Mm-hmm.
back to the bank now that you've fixed it up and it's in better shape,
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of idea.
Got it.
So that was really kind of the beginnings of that
Your
plan. And
foray into mortgage note investing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
And not knowing really what I was doing, we did it all wrong. The paperwork was totally wrong and, you know, made all kinds of mistakes, but that was the introduction.
Hmm. And what states was this in? You said Midwest.
Midwest, so like Ohio, Michigan, Indiana
Hmm.
primarily, and then
Gotcha.
we had a couple in Kentucky, one or two in Texas, one or two in Georgia, a few outliers, but the vast
Hmm.
majority were those three states.
So at this point, was your wife mostly, she wasn't really involved in that side of the business?
No, she was home, taking
Yeah.
care of kids and just trying to keep things going as best we
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to manage.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
for sure. So, okay, so how many of those lease option or seller finance type deals did you do?
So it was a package of 60 properties. We seller financed out maybe 25.
Gotcha. And then you
So
sold off the other
roughly half.
properties?
Yeah, sold them off, or in some cases, the city, you
Mm,
know,
they condemned
destroyed the
them or
house because it was in such bad shape, or
yeah.
lost it to taxes or something. So there's a variety of other things,
Hmm.
but we did enough of the seller finance ones that we're like, huh, this is cool. Like this, given the right circumstances, this is a really cool
Yeah.
idea, good option.
Well, I think what's cool too is like with your flipping, okay, you were in debt. I mean, at least at some point, so you had it, but you realized there's access to capital, someone else's money that
Right,
you're able to still, it wasn't a reason for you to just quit, right?
right.
There was still a lot of cards stacked against you and a lot of adversity, but
Yeah,
you found a way to make that work through someone else's money. And
Yeah.
then with this 60 property portfolio, I don't know the relationship or every ins and outs of there, but you were helping someone else with their problem. You had more time, I'm guessing, than they had.
Yeah.
Um, and so you're gathering all this experience and knowledge along the
Yeah.
way without using any of your own money, and you're making money through that process. What did I get
Yeah.
wrong there?
No, that you nailed it. And then at the same time, so 2009, we had started making some of these contracts because that's we didn't know they were called notes.
Hmm.
Um, Started
Hmm.
making some of these, and then I heard about a class happening down in Texas where what
Hmm.
he was describing sounded a lot like what we were
Pretty
doing.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Okay.
go down there, and Mr. Eddie Speed was teaching his class all about
Hmm.
buying what I was making, these notes. I'm like, oh, they're called notes. Okay, cool. And
That's so funny.
and that was
Yeah.
kind of that introduction to this larger world. And then he told me about this conference coming up in the fall of
Hmm.
2009 called Noteworthy that
Mm.
was happening down in
Hmm.
New Orleans. So we got permission from these guys to use some of their money to send us down to New Orleans and learn more
Mm.
about what we're doing and do it
That's
better.
awesome. Awesome.
And immediately started making those connections and contacts, and that's been just the launch pad for sure.
That's really, really cool. So in the last, sounds like 15 years is how long you've been doing like the note thing,
Yeah,
maybe a little bit longer.
yeah,
But since you heard the term note and
yeah.
it's been 15 years, what have been some of the ups and downs in the last 15 years when it comes to mortgage note investing?
That's a good question because it hasn't all been just fantastic and perfect.
Yeah.
Definitely still ups and downs. So we had those 60 properties. There wasn't a whole lot there to work with, so it was what it was.
Hmm.
Um, my old partner and I, we started raising money to go out and do the same kind of thing we were doing, but with higher quality property, higher quality borrowers and things,
Hmm.
and had some success with that. Like it was decent, but not fantastic.
Hmm.
And again, huge learning arena.
Yeah.
And then just it kind of up and up and up, like slowly but surely. I worked for a hedge fund for a year,
Okay.
uh, which again just added to the experience.
Yep.
Helped pay the bills for again just a little while. And
Yeah.
it was in 2015, early 2015. My old partner, he's like, you know what? I've got this other opportunity. I got to take it. I said, no
So wait,
problem.
so you did work for somebody else after
I did. Technically, that's true. That's true. By on contract, I wasn't officially employed,
Fair, fair. All right,
but
that's
by
fair.
contract. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Semantics,
Yeah.
but yeah, I hear you. No, yeah, I'm with you. You got, I
Yeah.
mean, you got to do what you got to do, but
Yeah.
and it sounds like that was the contract experience was a positive one. You got good experience, got some
Yeah.
pay for
Yeah.
it, paid the bills.
Yeah. Which is good.
So that's always good. And then so in the last 9 years, then since 2015, what has your mortgage note investing career looked like?
That's when it really has that's when it made the biggest difference. I felt like those first few years was a lot of learning and
Yeah,
just kind of getting it done.
yeah.
And then after that, started, on my own, going out and raising some money for
Hmm.
going out and buying notes. And I,
Hmm.
when I first started, it was all for non-performing notes.
Hmm.
Uh, and that can be a challenge in and of itself, where
Yeah, for sure.
you think it's going one way and it goes a different way, and you
Yeah,
think you're going to make this much and make that much. And so that
right.
was
So talk
still
about
a
that
bit of a roller
briefly.
coaster.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
The there are a lot of nuances within the note space, as you and I both know, and
yeah,
first, seconds, contracts for deed, mortgage
yeah,
notes,
yeah,
deeds of trust, whatever. But how did you kind of moving away? It sounds like you moved away from non-performing notes because you mentioned earlier in your fund, Earnest Investing
yeah.
Fund, you buy performing notes. So was that shift from non-performing to performing, was that market conditions driven, or was that really just that's just what you prefer? It's more predictable. What were the reasons to move away from the non-performing side?
Kind of all the above. So market conditions for sure,
Hmm.
availability and pricing
Yeah.
just got worse in both of those cases.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a big part of it. And I'll tell you, going from the adversity to abundance thing is
Yeah.
a big draw for my wife and I looking at this was if we set up a fund and we
Hmm.
start buying performing notes, you mean we
Hmm.
could have monthly income? Where
Right.
with the non-performing, we'd make
Oh,
a bunch of
it's
money one month and then nothing for
it's
another month or
it you're
two,
back to
whatever it
your
was.
fix and flip days, but it could
Yeah,
be even a longer hold potentially. And
yeah,
like you said, it's very hit or miss with the
yeah.
on the NPL side. And for those who are unfamiliar, we're talking about creating or buying debt. And so then you're the essentially the quote unquote bank. No, Nathan is not a bank. I'm not a
No.
bank, but you become the lender in that sense. You're acquiring or originating. You're acquiring existing mortgage debt or originating
Hmm.
seller finance debt. So some people are, this may be a foreign concept to some people,
Yeah.
so we won't go too deep on that. But so talk about the last maybe 2 or 3 years of your mortgage note career. What does that look like?
Again, just up and up. And it's just because this is a relatively small space,
Yeah,
um, you know, relationships, connections, networking, like whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing, but it's really it has so much to do with who you know.
yeah,
And so just and it's not something you can just create uh,
no,
day one. That takes time. And so over time, that's been building up. And so it was
yeah,
last year that I took over this conference.
right,
And I was approached by the old owners and they said, you know what, it's just not for us.
yeah,
Are you interested? And my first thought was the networking and just those connections and the contacts. I'm
yeah,
like, that absolutely,
yeah.
for sure.
I remember talking to you at the Diversified Mortgage Expo 2 years ago when
Hmm.
you had decided to take it over for
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah.
And you said that you had some experience running events as well.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like, okay, maybe you hadn't done this exact event before, but you're drawing off of your experience and your strengths. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're pushing the boundary, probably stretching your own
Yeah.
comfort, out of your own comfort zone a little bit, I'm guessing. But you've done similar things. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, and like I said, it's gone really well from what I've seen. And that
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. I mean, people ask me all the time, where do I buy these mortgage notes? It's like, well, it's a relationship game.
Yeah.
So chill out a little bit and start building relationships, and
And that's my answer is go to conferences.
mhm. Yeah,
Mine, somebody
absolutely.
else's, it doesn't matter, but you have to
Yeah,
go to conferences. It makes such a difference.
sure.
Just getting face to face with people.
And I think now, after the pandemic, it's even more important.
Yeah, I
I don't know
agree.
about you, but it's very easy for me to be sort of isolated, working from
Hmm.
home, and I'm on Zoom or Teams all day long, and then it's like,
Yeah.
but did I really actually connect with anyone? You know,
Yeah,
so these
exactly.
live events, I think, are even more critical now than they were 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so, okay, so it's just gone up and up and up, and I know you have a podcast as well, right?
Yeah, Dave Putz and I would do a podcast together. It's fun. Our businesses are not actually connected at all. We just do a
Okay.
podcast together because
Yeah,
it's fun and interesting and we learn
sure.
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you say the name of it?
No, so if you're looking for it, easiest way is just go JKP Holdings,
Got it.
search that on YouTube or Spotify or whatever.
Yep.
And we've got 3 years now. We've been doing this a little more than 3 years.
Yeah. And
And so I don't know how many dozens of episodes that is, but a
yeah.
lot.
Well, it's when Chris Seveny asked me to join his Good Deeds Note Investing podcast years ago, my
Uh,
first reaction to myself was no way, because I was just not comfortable. And actually, I want to talk about this with
yeah.
you. Um, I'm not an extrovert. I mean, I'm definitely an introvert.
Hmm.
Um, and it just was, are you kidding me? Whereas Chris can just like, he'll just talk to anybody and spout things off, and he's in his wheelhouse behind the
Yeah.
mic. But
Yeah.
um it scared me, but I knew I should say yes for the exact
Yeah.
same reason you said yes to running the Diversified Mortgage Expo.
Hmm.
different things, but that I knew this would help me, network and get out there and just sort of, expand my own connections and help me professionally and personally. And it really has. And now I've launched this podcast, which is a
Yeah.
sort of in a sense, a spin-off of that one. But
Yeah.
I know, sort of public speaking and being out in the front and center in front of a big crowd is maybe not naturally your thing. Uh,
No.
Talk about the growth, the personal growth and mindset growth that you've experienced on that front.
So it's I do quite a bit of public speaking now. And I'll tell you, pretty much every time I still get butterflies. Like
Hmm.
it's not 100% comfortable. It's not my comfort zone to be out in
Hmm.
front. I can do it and I actually do enjoy it, but I'm
Hmm.
nervous every time. So that's the first thing we'll start with. So
Yeah.
if you're in that camp,
Yeah. Well, I
don't
think
worry. That's okay.
exactly, that's right. And it's like people nowadays, I'm not, there's way too much anxiety and stress, and that's a real thing. I'm not
Yeah.
knocking that when it's an extreme. We definitely have a mental health crisis on our hands. That
Yeah.
said, it's okay to get butterflies. It's
Yeah.
okay to be nervous
Yeah.
because that means you care about your presentation and how things go. And you wouldn't be human if you didn't have some level of stress
Yeah.
beforehand. That's my opinion anyway.
For sure. And then the trick is um, having those butterflies and that nervousness and then doing it anyway.
That's
That's the
right.
trick.
That's right.
Uh,
I love that.
and but just push through because
Yeah.
it's not that big a deal. Honestly and truly, it's really not. And
Right.
and the honest truth is, um, if it's not a perfect presentation, if it's, you're kind of flubbing through it a little bit, people like that because they know
It's
they can
authentic.
totally identify with that. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
In so many ways. And I've been told that too, where they're like, I like your presentation because you're real. I'm
You're
like,
relatable.
I don't know how else
Right.
to be, but okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Right. Right. I like that you really screwed up. No, but
Yeah.
no, you're right. And the truth is too, you zoom out
Yeah.
after you've done a few of these DME events, and no one's going to remember what you said 2 years ago. It's like it's not that big of a deal if you if
Yeah.
you fumble things a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you've definitely expanded your mindset and push yourself outside of your comfort zone from a public speaking standpoint. You got the
Mhm.
podcast, you got the conference, and then now you have your fund.
Yeah.
Um, are those kind of the main things from a professional standpoint that you have going on?
Yeah, mainly a couple other kind of side projects, but
Yeah.
yeah, but mainly that's it. And it's good. And it keeps me very busy,
Yeah.
which I actually really like. There's times for sure where I'm like, I just need a break for a minute.
Sure.
But really, I would rather be busy than bored. So
Yeah.
I'm
Me
grateful that I
too.
can be busy.
So is I'm going to try not to answer this one myself, but is note investing passive?
Wouldn't that be awesome? Here's the thing. Kind of. Uh, if you can get a portfolio of, there's a couple of ways that there's levels of
Yes.
passivity.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
if you're running your own portfolio, and it's all performing, sort of.
Relatively. Yep.
There's always going to be something you're going to have to deal with. There's at the very least, you're going to have to talk to your servicer at least once a month, and just get updates on things and then have decisions to make on whatever the outcome of those meetings are.
Yeah.
So at the very minimal, you'll have to have that. The most passive way to invest
Mhm.
in notes is into a fund. And it
100%.
sounds like a
Yeah.
plug, but
It,
really it
it
is.
it can be, both things can be true. It can be a plug and it can be the most passive way.
Yeah.
And you and I each I still have a fund that's open, the Integrity Income Fund.
Hmm.
And I couldn't agree more. It's the most passive way to be a note investor.
Yeah.
Um, I think buying stocks and bonds is probably, about as passive as it gets, but you still should watch it. And
Yeah.
um, So I agree that it's a spectrum. It's not
Yeah.
either or.
Yeah.
People like to hear that everything's black and white, but the fact is there's a lot of in between in note investing. And if you're running a
Yeah.
massive non-performing note fund, that is not passive.
That is
If you're
very risky.
managing,
Yeah.
you're raising capital, managing the assets, it's not passive.
No,
Um,
no, there's a
so
lot of work.
yeah, absolutely. But you and I each have a path for the passive note investor to
Yeah,
and I will say there are a lot of benefits to note investing that you don't find in real estate. To me, it's a
totally.
little bit quote safer. Nothing's fully safe, but if you're investing in first lien mortgage notes that are backed by hard real estate,
Mhm.
that's fairly safe, relative to a lot of the other investment options out there. You may not get a 30% return as a passive note investor. I mean,
Yeah,
you
right.
won't.
Yeah. And that's
Um,
the trade-off. The more passive, probably the less return you're going to get, more or
yeah,
less, generally.
absolutely. Agreed. Um, awesome. Well, you ready for some rapid fire questions?
Yeah.
All right. I've got a couple that are new here. Um,
Okay.
in your opinion, what is the role of luck versus skill in real estate success?
There's certainly a degree of being in the right place at the right time. But a big part of that is just having your ears and eyes open to opportunities because there are tons all over if you're paying attention and if you know what to watch and listen for.
It's
So
really
that's what I would
that's
say.
that's a great answer. Um, Here's a little controversial one. What
Okay.
are some unethical practices you've witnessed in real estate or mortgage note investing?
Oh, I'll tell you, I wasn't the only one, which kind of makes me feel better. Where it was wire fraud.
Mm,
Somebody working for one of these hedge funds,
mm,
and unbeknownst to me and I think about six or seven other investors, the guy working for this fund, I don't know how he thought he would get away with it, but
mhm,
when it came time to purchase the note, you send a wire to the company, and then they send you the documents. He had set up his own bank account. So
mm,
instead of sending money to the fund like I thought I
mhm,
was, I
mhm.
sent it right to him.
Wow.
And I was actually the smallest investor in that scheme,
Mm,
but in total, he took everybody for just under $1 million, which is
wow.
a big ticket. So, I mean, I'm not quite sure what happened. I know FBI was into it and all these other things because that's a
Wow.
pretty big amount,
Absolutely.
but that can happen.
Yeah, ask you how you know, right?
Yeah.
What about recently? Any surprising market trends or market changes that you've weren't necessarily expecting, and how have you adapted to that?
I've been interested to see the different kinds of notes coming out lately. I've seen raw land notes have
Hmm.
become quite
Yeah.
a bit more popular lately, and
Yep.
short-term loans like
Yep. Bridge
fix and flip
loans.
loans, that kind of
Yeah.
thing, bridge
Sure.
loans.
Hard
Those have been
money.
more common, where I didn't see any of those, 5 years
Yeah.
ago, and now I'm
Which
seeing
makes
a lot
sense.
of it.
Banks have really tightened
Yeah,
up
yeah,
their underwriting standards. So it's hard to get a loan if even if you have millions of dollars
yeah,
in your own bank account and you want a loan, it's hard to walk into a bank and get a loan right now.
yeah, yeah.
So there's that gap is being filled. Um, got it. Awesome. All right. What is a challenge that you're facing in your own business right now?
Um, For me, actually, I would say raising capital.
Yeah.
That's for me, that's the bottleneck. I've got tons of deal flow,
Hmm.
I hate saying no to deals, but I'm having to
Yeah.
do that just because I don't have the capital available. As soon as I
Got it.
get money in from an investor, it's right out the
Put it
door
to
like
work.
within a week. So
Yeah.
that's been the challenge, is just getting the money in the door
And I
quick
think
enough.
with inflation and just higher rates, higher cost of living, higher, interest rates, and it's just been harder to raise capital in the last
Yeah,
3 years than it was before that.
yeah.
Um, all right, back on the personal side, what is one thing that people misunderstand about you?
Um, Something people misunderstand. I think, they'll see me out at a conference or something, and I can do the stage thing. I can do the speaking, but really and
Mhm.
truly, I would rather just be at home watching a movie. I like quiet. Right
Yeah,
now the house is empty. That's my favorite. I just like it, just a nice, quiet, calm environment. So
yeah.
the conference thing is the total opposite of that.
Hmm.
And like I say, I
Got it.
can do it, but my preference is actually calm, quiet,
Yeah. So you're
silent.
worn out after it.
I am,
Um,
yeah.
if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would you choose?
Let's go with Thomas Edison.
Okay. Why?
Um, I tenacity is the word for him.
All right.
Just, you know, the light bulb thing where it's hundreds of attempts till he finally got it. And it would have been easy to give after attempt number 50 or 100 or 200, but no, he just
Sure.
kept at it. So I like that. I like that quality of
Yeah.
just like, no, you just keep going. Just keep going.
So he was like a 10-year overnight success or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, if you were given $10 million tomorrow personally with not for your fund, just someone wrote you a check, what would you do with it?
Honestly, I would buy a bunch of notes. The whole overarching reason of setting up
Mhm.
the fund and everything we're doing now is to
Mhm.
fund my retirement, which I'm hoping to do in the next 5 years. So that's
Nice.
so if I had 10 million today, yeah, I would go and do that and have my
Got it.
retirement funded.
Sounds great. What is a book or two that you could recommend? You mentioned a couple earlier. Any others?
Yeah, the great ones to get started. If you haven't read them already, Rich Dad Poor Dad for sure it's one of
Hmm.
those life-changing books.
Yep.
Um, uh, we call it Millionaire Mind, but I think there's a longer title. Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, I think it's called. Harv
Sounds
Eker.
right. Hmm. Yeah.
Also fantastic. Just to open your mind, look at things differently. A third one I would say, Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect.
That's a good book.
Also
Yep.
fantastic. Just little changes over time result in massive change.
It's very true. Um, what is one question that I have not asked that you wish I had?
Oh, uh, I don't know. I think we did a pretty good
We've
job
been pretty
here.
thorough. What about your
Yeah.
fund? Are you able to talk about the intricacies of the fund more?
Yeah. It's a 506c,
Yeah.
which means I am allowed to talk about it. I can advertise
Hmm.
and all that stuff. It also means that it's open to accredited investors. So people that make at least $200,000 a year or have a net worth of over $1 million outside of the primary residence. Um, it's really made for people who just want to set it and forget it.
Yep.
It's a great investment in an IRA to help build up your IRA fund. Um, it's a good investment, honestly and truly. And again, I know that sounds like a plug, but it really is. And
Yeah.
it's just a good place to put your money. And
Is it
mine are
a
yours, but notes is a
yeah,
great set.
absolutely. So is it a how long's the commitment? What do you pay distributions monthly, quarterly? How does that work?
Sure, yeah. So it's the minimum investment's 50,000.
Okay.
We're doing a 5-year term
Okay.
and raising 5 million, and we pay out 8% with quarterly distributions.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and with all of your experience, you've with I mean, even the curves experience and the fix and flips and then
Yeah,
creating notes, doing the seller financing, the contracts on that side,
yeah,
working for a hedge fund, and this wasn't an overnight thing where you're like, oh, I'm just going to start a note fund and ask for
yeah,
people's money. You've got a
yeah.
lot of
No, and beware the weekend warrior that went to a
yeah,
course for 3 days and now thinks
absolutely.
they can do it all.
Well, and a nice thing too, the fact that you're front and center, you're out there.
Yeah.
Uh, Chris Seveny and I have talked about this. It's, you've got a podcast, you got an event that you're the face of.
Mhm.
you can't really run too
No,
far.
no,
So if you're
exactly.
going to try to steal people's money or do
Yeah,
something, that then it's going to be a tough one.
yeah,
We'll be able to track you down. So
yeah,
I think someone who's out there in the public eye a little bit, like you and I are a little bit, is we're in a sense more trustworthy than
yeah,
somebody who you never see. So
yeah,
Nathan Turner, this has been awesome, my friend.
yeah.
Anything you want to add before we sign off?
Just in going back to the title, Adversity to Abundance,
Yeah,
just keep going, and just it can be a
love
rough
that.
ride, but just keep going. There's
Love
light
that.
around the corner. It's there. Just keep going.
Absolutely. And your website is earnestinvesting.com. Is there anywhere else we should direct people?
You can go there or to the conference website, Diversified Mortgage Expo. Both of them connect with each other. So yeah, have a look.
Awesome. I know you're active on LinkedIn and some other platforms. So fantastic, Nathan. This has been really good. Thanks again.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you.
And to the listener, thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, which is your time and specifically your attention during that time. We appreciate that. So check out our website, adversitytoabundance.com, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks all. Take care.
Thanks.